Hey everybody, so for a little bit of context for what the hell you're about to listen to, I had a lengthy conversation slash podcast thing with IanWaffles, who is the co-writer of these amazing Archie Sonic essay videos done by LowArt. You should check them out if you haven't already. In fact, if you haven't before this point, you'll probably be a little bit confused about the contents of this conversation because we kind of just bounce all over the place talking about those videos themselves, the Archie Sonic comics in general, characterization, Sonic, and just literally anything related to these, and we sort of vacillate between different versions of Sonic characterization as well. They were just interesting topics that we wanted to have a chat about, and so we did. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it, just to contextualize that before heading in. And I hope you enjoy the conversation on a listen as much as I did having the conversation itself. So there you go. But hey, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
thanks for responding to Random Stranger.
Well, I mean, to be completely fair, I know who you are.
True. We did meet from me being like, hey, I saw you reply to one guy. So that means you watch videos.
Yeah.
Am I correct? Like, yes.
I do. Which, yeah, I mean, I guess that's as good a place as any to start. So you're doing co-writing for these mammoth Archie Sonic videos, to put it one way. How's that been?
Really good. Because now I think we've just like cracked our brains open to where we can just do this very simply because we wrote the Knuckles script in 2 days. So,
Wait, in 2 days?
Yeah, because him and Loar and I are just so, I guess, like, just ingrained into this comic, and he does, YouTube for a living,
Mm-hmm.
he writes essays for a living, so like he legitimately was just able to like crank out an entire script in 2 days for the whole, like, we're not just covering this Knuckles comic, we're covering everything up to when he comes back to life in issue 125.
Wow.
And he was just like, I know exactly what I want to say. So
Wow, that's crazy. I actually can't imagine writing something that long in that amount of time. I've got some work to do, I guess.
He's an insane person. I mean, he also edits all these, and you've seen how they look.
Oh yeah, absolutely. His editing is really good.
Yeah, like when I first asked him to do this like 4 years ago or whatever, I just expected like it would just be scrolling down a page because that's everything you see. But he's like, nah, I can like cut out all the individual panels and give them unique animations, and we're gonna time like the music to certain panels. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? He's like, it's fun. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, because for me, I've made like a couple of videos on like comics or manga or whatever, and I do try to like do some stuff with it sometimes, but it is just kind of laborious. Like, it takes a lot of time and effort, and maybe if I did that stuff more often, it would be a little easier, but it's definitely a lot harder to work with like still images than it is to just like plop an anime or something in there.
Yeah, for sure. And then yeah, I found your stuff. The big video I saw of you was the Sad AM video, which is still probably my favorite video of yours, just because I just loved where you land on it with like the kind of like, here's why it's still timeless. Here's why you can still enjoy and love it today. Like, it's not just some weird Sonic cartoon that certain people enjoy. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I think that a lot of Sonic stuff from that general era in particular kind of gets that rap of like, oh, it's just like all that weird Sonic stuff, and people kind of don't really give it as much of a chance because the franchise has the kind of reputation that it has. But I don't know, I mean, like, a lot of that stuff is still really good, even if some of it is like kind of cheesy. It's just, I think people should give it a little bit more of a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a big problem with just Sonic content, especially I think within the fan base, is that I understand why like normies aren't gonna like check out the Archie Sonic comic,
Oh
but
yeah, they're insane.
Yeah, like, of course. And that's, to me, that's how I feel looking at any series. Like, before I knew what JoJo's was, or like I had watched JoJo's, like, I knew for like 5 years or however long it's been out. Like, I literally only just saw it. So however long it's been out, I saw it, but I was just like, there's like, and I had watched tons of anime, but I'm just like, no, I don't understand this. This is weird. I don't know if I'm gonna like this. So like, I get that just normal, like, you see it and you go, that's weird. Echidna fascists.
Not for me.
Not for me. This is a little weird. Look at this art or this thing, or like Sonic and Tails are fighting over some girl. That seems a little weird. But to me, what makes Archie Sonic discourse so frustrating, and why I wanted to make these videos, is because it's like the Sonic fandom will give so much grace to the games, right?
Mhm.
And I do this too. If you have your favorite Sonic game, like it's always like, oh man, I adore this, but and then you give all the reasons that like someone else might not enjoy it. But we love Sonic. We give a lot of grace to Sonic, and we say like, oh, even though this mechanic's broken or this, it's the heart behind it, right? Or it's this thing that really clicks with me. And I just don't understand why the Sonic fan base is not willing to give that to what is, in my opinion, like especially the pre-boot Flynn era, literally like just the greatest Sonic content that exists.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the thing about Archie Sonic is it's really easy to pick on it, right? Because it has all of these really weird things that happened, and it has, the Knuckles comics, and it has the Echidna Fascists and all that stuff. But the thing is, it ran for like over 20 years. Like, it had like over 300 issues when you count like all the spin-offs and stuff together. Like, it had a multitude of writers. You can't just like take all of that and then just put it under one label, like this is all weird or all bad. Like, it's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, well, and what makes it always weird to me is because I think that it's like I said, the little Flynn era and reboot, the art's just so good.
Oh yeah,
that I just can't understand how a Sonic fan wouldn't want to give it a shot. And to me, what draws me to Archie Sonic is that it doesn't give a crap about if it's like the games. It's its own thing, and it doesn't just like teeter with that idea. Like, no, it is itself full blast 24/7. We are doing our own thing, and I'm just like, why wouldn't you want to experience a super cool thing?
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, like, that. I mean, I understand why to a certain extent, but also at the same time, it's like, it kind of sucks that we're never really going to get something quite like that ever again, because now the level of, corporate oversight from Sega is a lot stricter, which, again, I get it, but also it's like, it's just kind of something that reminds you of an era that we're probably not going to be able to go back to.
I mean, you watched my Sonic video. I don't think we're going to get anything that I mentioned in that Sonic video.
Oh yeah, no.
Even just his hilarious like quips, like that level of like just being a smug asshole is never coming back, even though it's so endearing.
I love the like, one of the examples that you pointed out was the bit where he's chewing out Naugus. And he says the thing about, like, first of all, I wasn't talking to you, so shut up. It's like, it's just really good.
Oh, no, the first one's even funnier. He goes, first, because the Naugus goes like, Julian is my enemy as well, because Sonic says, if this were Eggman, you wouldn't stop me. And he goes, Julian is my enemy as well. And he goes, 1, nobody calls him that anymore. Get with the times. 2, I wasn't talking to you. And 3, your voice sucks. Shut it.
Yeah, he's like, you're just like, not only was I not talking to you, but also your voice sucks. And I don't want to hear it.
You.
It's just, yeah, that level of like semi pettiness, but just like in a really funny way.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you about that too, because not in terms of like praising my video, but just more of like you had said that there were things about that you were like, oh, normally I see Archie Sonic portrayed this way. You said my video kind of convinced you that, oh, this kind of, it's not just he's an asshole. Like, there actually is a balance of, like, a really good Sonic here. So what was it that, like, kind of, you thought, maybe not what convinced you, but just what did you think was interesting? Because I love talking about Archie Sonic's characterization. Yeah,
like, it was definitely, I mean, I have, for a while, kind of had that similar frustration with these, the way people depict the House of Cards scene in particular, where they're like, oh, Sonic is just such an asshole in this bit where he's talking about how Tails worships him or whatever. And I, like, in particular, that one is kind of like, that is the starting point from which I could sort of like start to see things a little bit better, because I remember reading that span of issues and being like, this is not nearly as bad as a lot of people made it out to be. Like, he genuinely feels bad. He apologizes to Tails. He talks about how he failed him and all this stuff. And it's like, it's a genuinely really sincere scene. Like, it's really sweet. And so then, like, because basically my upbringing with Archie Sonic was the period of time where I was reading it the most was probably like from the ages of like 6 to 10, 11-ish. And at that time, a lot of it flew right over my head. Like, I didn't have the context. I didn't have, like, all of the build up, and I was mostly familiar with the early 3D games at that point. So a lot of it was just kind of like just going with it, just going with the flow. Like, I don't know what's going on, but okay. And so looking back at it retrospectively for a while, especially when I was like a young teenager, I kind of just got the impression from what everybody else said that like, oh yeah, Archie Sonic's a dick, like, and that's it. But when it came to like stuff like, you know, his conversation with Tails or the really sweet scenes that he has with Sally in particular are some of my favorite, where it's just like, oh, well, yeah, he has like a bit of a more aggressive lean to him, I guess. But at the same time, it counterbalances really well with the fact that he actually genuinely cares about the people in his life. And that's why he's so, like, on top of things, especially because he's lost so much too. Like, you kind of have to take into account that this Sonic lives in a world where there is much more at stake on a regular basis, and they have lost and conceded ground so much more often because, you know, sorry.
No, sorry. I was gonna let you finish. I just want to add to that real quick, which is that, the reason Sonic is such an asshole is because he is fighting like the evilest of evil beings, who the comic shows you have, one, killed people, two, tortured people. Like, it's not just like, oh, like Eggman, you know, perfect chaos destroyed Station Square, but everyone says like woo in the fight, so like they're probably all okay, right? No, right. The comic shows you these characters have killed people, and they are like demons. Like, they are bad people. So it makes sense that in that kind of world, you can't just have a Sonic who's like, I beat you up and then, you know, I go on with my day, don't start trouble again. No, you gotta have Sonic who's like, hey, Scourge, come here for a sec. Grabs him by the collar. You're a bully. You're a loser. Get in the fucking mud. Nerd. Like, because... you go ahead. Yeah, I was like, because that's basically kind of what I was gonna say. It was just, you know, like, when it comes from the game's perspective, it's like, yeah, I mean, Eggman has gotten pretty close to taking over the world several times. But the premise is always based around this idea of like, okay, well, he wants to take over the world, but Sonic always stops him. This is like kind of the opposite, though. Like, it's Eggman has already taken over the world before. We know that he's capable of doing it. If we get lazy and we don't pay attention, he's gonna do it again. God, I mean, not to mention, like, not to get too far into the madness that the videos haven't covered yet, but like, for example, the egg grapes? That's... Which definitely not only, like, killed people off screen, but we watch them, like, seconds before they die, because when they introduce the egg grapes, you can actually read on the thing, it says, like, 99% bio-deletion. So, like, we're just watching someone die, you know? Like, he has, like, what is it, like, hundreds of people imprisoned in these things? Yeah, because he wiped out half of the echidna population. Which, can I just say, what an incredibly, like, dark way to get rid of, like, a bunch of expanded cast, is just to be like, oh yeah, they've all been trapped in pods and, like, had their biodata deleted. Well, and then he then says, like, he's gonna use it, so, like, he wants to, like, drain energy from the Zone of Silence, which is how we get Nagas back. And he's like, but I'm gonna use their lifeless bodies as filters so that they can take all, like, the poisonous parts of it. And then his Terminator daughter is like, hey, isn't there, like, a much easier way to do that? And he's like, of course, but where would the fun be in that? I just don't want to. Yeah, he doesn't want to. And that's why, well, and we didn't even mention the fact that this is not an Eggman who is like, you know, the original Robotnik, he took over the world and then the Heroes won. But this Eggman not only took over the world originally, he also killed his world's version of Sonic and everyone in it and got bored and came over to our world so we could do it again. So he's already, like, definitely won before. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite parts about the Archie comic in general. Like, it's such an insane thing to do, to not only have Robotnik be absent from the story for so long, but then be like, okay, you want to bring him back? Okay, here's a different one who's already killed Sonic. Yeah, he already killed Sonic, and he's back to do it again because he's bored. And it's great. It's such a good display of, like, how, like, fucked up and evil he is. Yeah, like, and that's why it's like, I think people could look at Sonic's aggressiveness and be like, okay, but why do they have to make him that aggressive, right? And of course they don't have to. But I guess, like, people, I guess more so, because why do you do anything in a story? It's because you chose to. But, like, but I guess more so of the idea of, like, someone could look at that and be like, okay, well, like, I know my Sonic, and he's just he fights Eggman, and he's not this mean about it, or he hangs out with his friends, and he's not pulling this kind of crap. It's like, no, you really don't understand what kind of world this Sonic lives in.
Yeah, and that's not to say, like, I mean, obviously some writers individually here and there can, like, make some decisions where it's like, I don't know that I would have done it like that necessarily, but...
Oh, of course.
But at the same time, it's like, it's like I said before, you can't just all, like, put it under one thing. You can't say, like, oh, well, Archie Sonic was, like, too much of a dick in this part, so he's too much of a dick in the whole comic. Like, there's too much of it to say that.
Yeah, and that's actually a point we're going to bring up in our next video. Not the next one, because that's Knuckles, but when we get to the Flynn era, the idea is that, like, the comic consistently mutates, is the way we describe it. So, like, for example, in the earlier issues, they make pop culture references, right?
Right.
Like, Eggman captures Amy Rose in the context of the universe because he stole U.S. fan mail. He stole U.S. Postal Service fan mail, and then captured her and, like, doxed her and got her. That event does happen in the Archie universe, but it is recontextualized when we become serious that, oh, she was just sending letters to Sonic, but he didn't steal from the U.S. Postal Service.
Right.
Like, Knuckles probably didn't quote Jimi Hendrix when he was fighting his Metal Knuckles. It probably didn't happen.
Or he came up with the quote.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like, so that's what I mean is, like, the comic constantly mutates upon itself, and so when you get to the Flynn era, what makes it so, like, easy to digest is that, one, you get a new artist with Tracy Yardley who does, like, excellent work.
Oh yeah,
and is a very distinct style, but it doesn't feel like you have to take everything that happened in the past so, like, seriously and literally as, like, it's like the story is linear. Everything that happened in the comic did happen. But the tone and the way it's presented changes and morphs as it goes on, to where when you get to the Flynn era, yes, all that stuff did happen, but it's almost like a soft reboot in the sense of Flynn can now recontextualize all that stuff. You can give it, like, a clean slate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And
that's what makes it so fascinating. So yeah, go ahead.
I think that's actually something that, like, people have kind of noted this with Sonic Frontiers recently, where... Ian has taken some things that have happened in previous Sonic games that, maybe some people haven't been that big of fans of, and he doesn't, like, throw them out wholesale. He recontextualizes them within the context of their own story and what he's doing with it. I actually kind of respect that approach a lot, because it doesn't just take the stuff that's unpopular and be like, well, people didn't like that, so I'm going to take this person's work and just, like, completely throw it in the garbage. Like, no, I'm going to take what did and didn't work about it and try to, like, build off of that in a way that, if you want to call it course correction, that's one thing, but, like, it's still respecting the material insofar as that it acknowledges it.
Yeah. I think for me, the reason I was so against combining everything for Frontiers was less about, like, what you're saying, and more so that I always, because the Archie games are so disconnected, or not the Archie games, the Sonic games, because the Sonic games are so disconnected anyway, as far as, like Unleashed basically just acts like the only Sonic characters who exist are Sonic and Tails.
Right.
SA, the classic games and up to SA2, they all pretty much fit together. But then, 06 is kind of its own thing. Then you have, like, Forces, which kind of feels like its own thing because it's like, where did Silver come from? All these different things. So to me, what I would have preferred for Frontiers is less of let's connect everything and more of let's just do another cool Sonic story. Because I guess for me, I just, if it pays off in the end, if it turns out that next game, calling back on all this stuff and having these moments with all the characters do lead to them being different, then I'll really enjoy that. But if it's just kind of like the game where we're just going to kind of address these problems, then I think that kind of makes Frontier's story a little weaker, because it's like, all right, we're going to address Knuckles' relationship, Amy's relationship, Tails' relationship, but I do hope then that means if you're saying this is all connected, then the next time we see these characters, they better have grown, Right.
Because that's one thing that, like, I feel a similar kind of frustration with. Like, I understand from a corporate perspective, it's like, oh, we have to have this consistent brand. We, like, it's like Sega wants, and not that there's anything necessarily wrong with this in certain cases, but like it's like Sega wants that consistency of like Mario, where it's like everybody can drop in and know who these characters are already. Like the status quo isn't constantly changing. But like if you want to have compelling character arcs, then like you gotta do something.
Yeah, that's kind of what made you stand out.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Whereas like with something like Archie, Flynn really like you can't just ignore all the stuff that happens. It's 200 issues of a linear story. You know, you can't just ignore that literally the last thing Tails and Sonic have like an interaction about in the pre-Flynn era is him saying "I hate you" to Sonic over Fiona. And then the final shot of the story before the last arc, which Tails isn't in, is him watching Fiona and Sonic walk away as he cries. So, like, Flynn can't just ignore that, you know? Like, that's a part of the story, you know?
It has to be addressed somehow.
Yeah, somehow, some way. And what I really loved about it was that he was like, okay, let's not make it about Fiona. And instead, let's make it that the Fiona situation is an extension of a character flaw for Sonic. And, let's tie into this and this and this and this. And we'll tie in Dad's story, and then boom, now it's not just like he's mad over a girl, it's that he's mad that Sonic just literally said "I hate you," ran away, and Sonic was like, anyway, I'm gonna put my arm around my arm candy and take her to the party, and he just didn't care, or in his head he thought
he'll get over it.
He's just being a kid, he loves me, I love him, he knows like it's fine. That's a part that I didn't get to talk about in my video, but I wish I did. But it would have just made it more confusing for people who don't know what's going on to be like, oh yeah, then like evil Sonic is like, or then Scourge takes Sonic's girlfriend. It's the funniest fucking thing ever.
It's so funny.
But the thing I love about another flaw of Sonic is that he doesn't actually care about Fiona, like a girlfriend. And I actually do like that. There's a part of him, like he fully admits, he's like, oh yeah, I was just dating her to fill a hole in my heart. And we see that with the way he talks about her, where he's like, where is Fiona? Like, it's not like she like said something and left. She's just gone. And his first thought isn't like, where's my girlfriend? Is she okay? He literally says, he's like, well, she keeps pulling this. Tails can have her. Like,
yeah, it's so like,
he's like, where's my arm candy
Sonic?
Yeah, he's being an asshole. It's great.
I do think I think that actually plays into, see, it's just this whole like circuitous thing. It's like Loart said, where it's like the world itself of Archie Sonic is kind of like a character unto itself, where like that also factors interestingly back into these other characters too, because like you have to, obviously Fiona, not the nicest character in the comic, but she's still interesting. And like, so you look at stuff like that and it's like, oh, that probably like feeds into her neuroses as well. And thinking like, well, the freedom fighters don't actually give a shit about me.
No, like people get mad about like her turning evil. Like that was the best thing possible, because the way it's done, like her body language is that of someone who like, because Sonic comes to her and he's like, all right, these people have told me that you're cheating on me. And he's like, you know, I'm thinking about that with regards to your past. And she gets offended about that. But it's like, lady, you are cheating on him.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that makes it so fascinating, is even when she is actively cheating on him, and also at this point it is pretty much decided I'm going to be with Scourge, she is still offended that Sonic is in a way going back on the kind thing he said of like, I'm not going to judge you for your past. But it's like, lady, he's judging you for your past because that is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so like you actually create a character that is damaged and is acting in these ways. Like the reason she hits Tails isn't because she's just evil. It's because people are confronting her with all these things she's done and her past that she was trying to get rid of. And also she's just kind of annoyed. She's like, you know what? If no one trusts me, and also I am doing these things, which is the other side of it, you know what? Fuck it. Get out of here, Tails. And literally the line she says, which is tied to her character, is, Tails, you're very smart, but the thing you need to learn is you cannot trust anyone, which is Fiona's whole character.
It's very like, it's interesting because it's very realistic flaws. Like, this is how you take a character who is a bad person, but like do it in a convincing way, where it's like there is some sort of like cognitive dissonance going on up there, where it's like maybe there is a part of her that wants to be accepted and seen as a good person, but she feels like she never will be. So she constantly preemptively sabotages herself. And then that just feeds into her own complex of like, well, if I'm going to do it anyway, might as well.
Yeah. And then which leads into the fascinating aspect of, when she's working with Scourge, and Sonic's just like, for someone, because he says like, well, why are you helping them? Like, you're not even from there. And she's like, well, he's like, I don't understand what your weird deal is with like loyalty. I am loyal to only me, and I protect me, and I put all of effort into me. And Sonic's like, well, that's really nice, but you sure are putting a lot of effort into Scourge. And she's like, well, it's not like that. And it's because she has dependency problems. She depends on Scourge, who is a fucking asshole. And it's so fascinating. And she's just one character where when she shows up, there's like 5 other characters who are also in the middle of their series-long character arcs. It's so cool.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of characters have stuff like that going on that like to similar degrees. You could go on about like so many different Archie characters like this.
Who do you want to talk about?
And regrettably, I believe that like, for example, I mean, people make jokes about the Echidna characters all the time, justifiably so. But like, when they're in the hands of other writers, sometimes you can feel the magic happening, and it's like, oh no,
fiction.
It's like, oh no, this is actually like kind of interesting.
Yeah, you have someone like Leon Da, who is a product of a line of people who were like literally like they wanted to use technology. Then the second they got out of line and like even like did anything aggressive, all of them were trapped in cosmic hell. So that creates some tension between them and like other echidnas. But then you find out that she's the final extension, and you contrast her with Dimitri, who wants the best for echidna kind, and then you have Leon Da, who is the final extension of that, which she just wants power. It's my turn to be in charge. Why aren't I in charge? And by the end of the story, she's literally like in the ruins of Albion, which is like the homeland of the echidnas. She has all the echidnas back, and she's standing in like a grimy, dirty house, and she's like, everybody, I brought the echidnas back together. We can be united under me. And it's like, you're just disgusting. It's great.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny that you brought up Leon Da first, because of all the echidna characters, I think she was always the one that interested me the most. When awesome. Like done in better hands. In particular, there's this one panel in what is it? Return to Angel Island, I think.
Yes.
Which
Father loves you more.
Yes, that's the one. John Gray is like just like filling that whole panel with like just this really like overshadowed like darkness, and like you can see it seeping onto her face. It's great. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, and that whole story is great too, because they talk about like, Leon Da, you're in charge now. Actually do something if that's what you care about. Like, why are you just being a constant nuisance? If you want to help, if you want to be in charge, you got what you wanted. Do it.
Yeah.
And of course, like, that's coming from Julie Sue, who she hates, and there's all that connection. And yeah, you get the final thing of like, I have no clue what's wrong with her. And then you just see her and she goes, Father loved you more, and she's crying.
Yeah.
But then we come to learn, which it was implied before, but Flynn solidifies it, that she killed her dad.
Yeah, it's just, there's so much complicated going on with you, girl. What's wrong with you? I love it.
Yeah, and then like then what makes her even better is you contrast her with Dimitri, someone who literally is like became a god. He's like the oldest echidna that we have left. He's literally been reduced to a head in a jar, and he's sitting here and he's becoming more and more like he initially comes to Knuckles to be like, hey, Enerjak's back, like we need to protect our people, because he just at this point he's like, we're gonna die. We're all gonna die if like we don't like deal with this and like actually just like chill out and vibe. But he can't do that because he's sown all this discourse through all these characters. He tries to portray himself. He says like, oh man, I just went to Eggman so that I could fight against Enerjak. You're the one who sold us out to Eggman for cybernetics. It's like, Dimitri, you were ahead and you walked up with a bunch of cybernetics, and your goal, you were like, oh, I'm so smart. One, I get to be in charge again, because now I'm not a floating head in a jar. I can actually lead my people. Only I can lead my people also. And two, we're going to take down Eggman from the inside, because we're gonna do something great here. And then Eggman tells him, hey, by the way, I put bombs in all your people's bodies. If you do literally anything to double-cross me, all of you die. And he's like, well, fuck. Uh-oh.
It's so... That's... By the way, I remember reading that for the first time, and like when he said that, like when he was like, oh, by the way, I planted bombs on all of you, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's great. And like
it's
the way
so
it's
good.
drawn. Yeah, and like that's just again, that's just one side character, and that's what I think. I came up, or me and Loar, when we came up with that line of like the world of Archie Sonic is the main character. To me, that is the appeal of the comic. Is that
absolutely?
I've tried to introduce it to people, and some of them will say like, well, in this arc, like all these other, like for example, Eggman versus Sonic. He doesn't like Eggman beats Sonic, and normally in a story, right, the hero would then rise to the occasion and have their victory, right? Like they would come back stronger. And we would show, like, this is why Sonic is the hero of Mobius. This is why he, Eggman shouldn't have trifled with him, because if you don't kill me, I'm going to come back stronger and I'm going to beat you. But no, because the comic says, the point is that it's not that there's only Sonic here to fight evil. It's that there are so many people who are willing to fight you.
Right.
And as long as that's still there, as long as you just focusing on me, that's not going to do you any good. Because even if you can beat me, which you did, then there's just going to be all these people who can kick your ass.
Yeah.
And it's great.
That's one of my favorite, like, that whole exchange is actually one of my favorites in the entire comic, because it's like, because in that context, it's not supposed to be undermining Sonic as a character. It's just supposed to show that, like, because, yeah, like, realistically, you can't do everything by yourself. You have to have people behind you that will help you. And, like, I think that's a good thing.
Well, especially against the main villain,
Yeah, I mean, especially somebody who's done that much damage.
Yeah, and that's why it's so impactful that the freedom fighters don't save their city. Nicole does. Nicole, this person who was just kind of their little handheld device and was slowly learning to, like, appreciate all these people, she gives them a gift, in the form of this city. And then we follow that story and all that stuff. But then also, the only reason that Knuckles, Tails, and Amy survive is because Snively wrongfully does not take out Mighty first, and Mighty goes fucking apeshit and destroys the robot. And so because of that, all those characters were able to be saved, because I don't know if Sonic was going to get up after his beatdown if Tails had...
God. And speaking of Snively, by the way...
the goat.
Some people have been talking about Snively recently, so I feel like this is an appropriate topic as well. Like, because, I mean, obviously we already had Snively and Sat-AM, and back then he was, like, I like Snively and Sat-AM, and I like his development from kind of being, like, meek and always falling back to sort of, like, starting to hate Robotnik and resent him for how he's treated. And so that just, like, going to its logical extent within the comic and, like, continuing to grow from there is, like, one of my favorite things. I really love how that panned out.
Yeah.
The whole thing where it's like he tries to warn where he tries to warn Hope ahead of time, that one always gets me.
That one's great. And what makes his downfall so good is that the whole idea of Snively is what Eggman told him in the Iron Dominion arc, where he's like, well, first of all, the Iron Queen doesn't love you, and two, you don't love her. You're a sniveling little worm. Like you can't love, and as soon as something goes wrong, you'll come back to me. And he does. And so Snively's final act of, like, his character is he's going to prove, like, no, I can love. I can do something for someone other than me. But the problem is that he's Snively, and he's an evil bastard. And so he goes to Hope, and he's like, we can like have a family. I've left the Eggman Empire, and then we can rule the world.
Yeah,
and
it's
like, oh, got it.
Very cursed comparison to make, but Snively very Walter White-esque in this sense. Like, even when you think that you want to do something good, like, you can't help but make it about yourself.
Yeah, you can't help but make it about yourself. And then the final thing, which is just that he's done this so many times, and Eggman has always, in his own weird way, been merciful. Mm-hmm. And he's allowed Snively back into the fold because he's the most useful one. He's not like a robot or, like, he's family. And, he knows what Snively's all about. It's not hard to, like, keep track of what he's doing. Or, like, deal with it. And so, like, he literally, I think they have, like, an issue where it's like he's programmed all his robots that if Snively tries to, like, mess with them, they will just turn on him and capture him immediately. But yeah, that's what makes it so good is like Snively goes all out. He actually has a pretty decent plan. He brings back the intruders to allow himself to get away. He sets up the thing with Hope where he's able to sneak in there. He gets like a weapon for the Iron Queen and all that kind of stuff. And yet, it's like, dude, you're going up against Eggman. And this is Eggman who's back and better than ever. And so what's great about it is that normally that ending, right, this is what makes it so Flynn is that he has the Iron Queen and Snively. He's like, oh man, boss. The Cubot's like, oh man, boss. I thought they were in love. That was kind of mean of you. And he looks at them, right, and it's like, okay. And then we see the scene where he's like, you know what? You two are better working for me than like being, than like me dealing with you. Like, you're useful. So like, Iron Queen, you can run this station. You can be with your stupid boyfriend or whatever the fuck. I don't care. Just stay out of my way. But no.
But no.
And that's what normally would have happened. But no, he's done. He's like, Snively, you played your final hand, and I think we're done. Game over. Thank you for playing.
Yeah, and the capsule thing. Oh, God. Yeah.
And what makes that moment so perfect is that he says, like, oh, you're going to stay in here for the rest of your life. And he goes, game over, Snively. And then there's just one panel where he just looks at the capsule, and he goes from a scowl to like a normal, like that kind of face.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that one panel you can read into so much, because why is he stopping? What is he thinking? He's game over, Snively, pause, and he kind of like hits the capsule, but there's no like bang sound effect. It's not even like you can barely even notice it. So the focus is his expression changing, and I've always taken that as like him really sitting there and being like, is it really over? Like, this is actually it? Fuck yeah. And then he walks away. Thanks for playing.
It's so nice.
Yeah, and the other way.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it adds just that little teensy bit of nuance to the situation where it's like, it's not just purely like, I can do this totally without thinking about it. It's like, he has to think about it for a second. He still ends up doing it, but there is that like tiny bit of him that's like, this is my nephew. Like, we've been doing this for a long time, but what the hell?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. Well, and that's the other layer. I'm glad you brought up that he's his nephew. So I think normally, you could just look at that as like, I don't think Eggman actually cares that he's family. But we know that this is not true because Eggman had a son and daughter, and he very explicitly, when he thinks he's killed Adam, he legitimately like covers his mouth and he's something like, my two children are gone. And then when M dies, he says like, I've lost a lot today because of those people. Now, obviously, his love is like very like, they're my cool creations, like they're extensions of me, and I'm a badass. But he does consider that they were his family, and he does actually feel things for that. And then whenever Adam betrays him, he's like, "Fuck you, die," and he's like, "All right, family was a waste of time." But if that's the case, why does he go back to, why does he bring Snively back so many times other than that he's useful? Why does he, put his arm around him whenever he takes him, and he's just like, it'll be like old times. So I do think that there is an aspect of like, this is my nephew.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck him.
It's like, it's so interesting to add that sort of dimensionality to a character that is otherwise like such a stone cold like piece of shit. Because, I don't know, I just like when villainous characters, even when they are very villainous, have that aspect of humanity to them. Because to me, that makes them more compelling.
Yes, and I do think people, I think oftentimes people miss out that you don't need much. Like, I think people go in the opposite direction where they make them too sympathetic. And you're like, well, I kind of was just having fun hating this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't really have to do much. All you really need to do is less of like, oh, they were abused, or like that's why I'm so happy about Eggman in the comic, is that he really is just a piece of shit. Like his backstory is literally just that he like screwed over Nate Morgan because he wanted power. Like, he's always just been power hungry. He wants to be known. He has a small ego, or he has a small sense of himself. He wants people to think he's cool. He makes all these weapons, and then they betray him, quote unquote, because he's literally like experimenting on people. and he's like, "Well, fuck you guys." And then he takes mercy from people, and he's like, "I can use this." So like, he's just evil,
Yeah.
But there, and I think that's what makes it so good for Eggman as a villain, is that he's like a cosmic demon in Archie Sonic.
I remember, I can't even remember what issue it was from, but there's this one panel of him somewhere where it's like it's like a spread of his face with like the like grimiest looking smile you've ever seen. It's so good.
I think it was in my video. Is it the one where he has like Sally and Sonic in his glasses, and
I
he's like,
think
oh,
so. I think
he's
so.
like, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few, because his plan is literally, I'm gonna nuke the planet and everyone else will be a robot. And then Sally's like, well, wait, you'll like kill all the people who work under you. He's like, yeah, and
I don't care.
well, in fact, I care so little that I'll joke about it and say you can't make an omelet without killing all your soldiers.
Sonic, you killed Nate Morgan. I don't.
Oh boy. What do you think of Mina Mongoose?
I love Mina. I think like a lot of the things that were mentioned in the video about her recently are actually really good points of like, you know, there's obviously a lot of people are going to be sort of predisposed to be annoyed by like love triangle stuff in general. And to me, like to some extent, I'm the same way sometimes. But like at the same time, I still think they did a pretty good job with giving her reasonable reactions and certain things. Like I like that instead of just like getting all like, oh, I hate Sally or whatever, like she still likes Sally. She admires her. And when that bit where she's in the hospital where she's like checking on Sally even though she's been injured, it's like, oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, well, it also helps that Mina probably has like one of the best Sonic designs ever.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
She's adorable, so like she doesn't really come across as like, who's this? Like she comes across as like very like cute, cute or whatever. So it doesn't really feel like she's like trying to be like, I don't know, like she's trying to get in the way. You know, she's just like, I love Sonic. I mean, this is where people get mad on the other extreme, which is that she just gets the arc that people would expect from Amy Rose.
Right. But I mean, like, oh god, they already complicated things with Amy enough.
Well, and this is what's always fun about the Archie Sonic comics to me, is that it is a comic that legitimately was like, you know what? We should have an arc where Silver the Hedgehog, it's like, okay, I'm following you. Sally's brother, okay, yeah, he's kind of important, so that makes sense. A Sonic robot, okay, that sounds kind of cool, but where's he from? Oh, he's from a long time ago, okay. A gag Tootsie Pop character, okay. 2 background wolf character. Wait, hold on. And then also Larry Lynx. They're going to be the main characters of a spy thriller. And you're like, wait, hold on.
Where, huh? And it's excellent.
And it's excellent. And that's because the Archie Sonic comic does not give a shit if you're from the games, and I respect it so much. It does not care if you are Shadow the Hedgehog. Where have you been for the past 100 issues? Get the fuck on the tree and get back in line. Yeah. You don't get to do anything right now. You're not a character.
Right now, we are focusing on Honey the Cat and Breezy from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, get out of here.
Which, by the way, that whole arc is also really good.
Oh, yes, I love that arc. But yeah, like that's to me, like, this is where, like, I don't know. So my experience with Sonic is that I played the games, and I just liked Sonic as the avatar for which I got to play the fun Sonic games.
Mm-hmm.
I never actually connected with the characters. I would play the stories, but I was just like, oh, Sonic's cool, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I never got emotionally invested. So, like, maybe if I had that, I could have this extreme rage that people have towards, like, the character getting sidelined. But I'm like, guys, you have to remember, this isn't their comic. They don't deserve shit. They weren't there back in 1992. Sally Acorn was. So she comes first.
Yeah, like, and I mean, like, to a certain extent, I think when I was a kid, I did emotionally attach to the characters more, but even still, like, I understood, even at that sort of, like, tender young age, that, like, all the different Sonic media that we got was always going to be, like, really different from each other. Like, yeah. I played the games, I had the Sega Smash packs on PC or whatever, and played Sonic 2, but then, like, at the same time, you had stuff like Sonic Underground reruns airing on like local public access TV, and I was like, what the fuck is this? But like you don't question it. You're just like, okay, everything's different. I don't care. It's just more Sonic.
Yeah, it's more Sonic. Yeah, for sure. And so like that, I think will always be something that we'll definitely never get from a Sonic series again, because it's not even just like from Sega not wanting that, because that's the thing that I think makes Archie Sonic so fascinating, is that I would never want to write a series the way Archie Sonic structured itself and did its stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But because of the way it did it, when Flynn comes in, he gets to create something so uniquely satisfying that, like, I'm glad it happened. Because we get peak fiction out of it. Like, you will never get something like the darkest storm from a conventionally told story.
Oh,
because
no,
it's just
yeah.
not, you just wouldn't get that. But because the comic just would throw out all these ideas and all these characters and just do such a like just drop them or do whatever, Flynn can come in and give you a 3-parter where all these plot points come back together, and it's not just like he's checking off a list, because he ties it into the fact that it was an evil computer AI who did the math and wanted to kill the comic. So it's like, how would you set that up normally? You can't. It's only because it's a comic book.
Right. Like, even with other stuff, like, for example, Archie Mega Man, which I think is a really good comic. I really enjoy Archie Mega Man a lot. But, like, you can tell from the fact that, like, it started normal that, like, you couldn't really do that kind of stuff with it the same way.
No. You'll never get a moment like, hey, here's this character named Dr. Finitibus, and he is the random scientist from the issue where Gala Na tries to murder Knuckles, Green Knuckles with the Chaos Siphon. He was that random background guy who got got killed. That's this character now, and your brain explodes because you're like, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah,
what?
I love Finitibus. That was like one of my favorite things that they did with retroactive continuity in the comic. I was like, yo, that's such a good idea.
No, it's so well, yeah, because that one's really cool. And then I gotta give a shout out to my favorite Stinky Man. I adore Flynn Jeffrey St. John. He is such a tragic, just a horrible character. And I love that because the comic ends, he does not get redeemed.
Yeah.
His story is literally one of a person who made his bed and lied in it. And I love that they constantly show this side of, like, he knows teaming up with Nagus isn't, like, the best thing. But he's Jeffrey. He wants to feel useful. He wants to feel like he has a purpose. He had a purpose whenever he was with Nagus, and then he had a purpose when he had a wife and he had, like, someone to fight for. He loses that, and so he goes all the way back to his selfish ways. And even when he's literally working with an evil wizard, he's like, no, I can tame him. I can make sure it's okay. I can
fix him.
Yeah, I can fix him. And then the moment where he offers that to Nagus, and this is one of the best moments for Nagus, that tiny little bit of humanization, like you said. He says, like, he's like, you're dying. I get it. And I know, like, being in, like, the Ixis cult or whatever, it was probably good to be a backstabber. But, like, we can't do this anymore. These people are ready to forgive us. Like, these people, like, if you wanted help, just ask for help. You know, and I know that I should have done that too. And you just get this one shot of Nagus, like, looking down, and, like, he's genuinely, like, considering it. Because he's dying, you know? He's thinking of, like, oh, maybe I should ask for help. And then all of the little demons in his head are like, don't you fucking dare. Think of that. And he's like, wait a second. You need a body, right? Turns left.
God.
And then he takes Jeffrey, and Jeffrey's final, like, the story of Jeffrey in the Archie Sonic comics is not that, like, you know what, you can do a lot of bad things, but, you know, eventually you can come around and redeem yourself. No, it's the story of sometimes you make your bed and you keep pushing things back and you lie in it. And that's the story of Jeffrey.
I love it. Like, that's again, like, talking about things like that, you'll never see something like this again. Like, you will never have a character who, upon their introduction, is so, like, insufferable and, like, just, like, genuinely one of the worst characters in a comic, and then have them have, like, such a fascinating through line, like, that far into the future.
Yeah, I love that Jeffrey, I don't know if you felt this way, but when he's talking to Silver, I like the way he talks. I genuinely think it's supposed to be implied that he wants to die.
Yeah.
Like, he says something to him, like, he's like, well, okay, you told us this. He's like, why don't you just, like, help us? And he's like, nah, man, like, you have a future to protect. I don't.
I do not have a future because I'm not planning on having one.
I don't plan to have a future. And then again, what makes it good that this is what makes Jeffrey, like, him losing in the end satisfying, is that it's like, okay, Jeffrey, if you really think, like, you're this piece of shit and, like, you deserve to die, I'm not saying, like, kill yourself, but there's a moment where he's being crushed by Nagus after, like, betraying him. He's like, you know what, I'm gonna leave or whatever, and then Nagus starts, like, crushing him, and he's like, no, I was just trying to stop the resistance, you know? And so you're like, it's like he's still trying to, like, have some sort of control. He still wants to have, like, some sort of, like, purpose, And then we get the other side of it, which is that he does save the city, because he's like, no, don't destroy the city. Say that there was an earthquake and you stopped it. And he's like, oh, Jeffrey, you're a good servant. He's like, yeah, I live to serve. So like Jeffrey's just in this limbo state.
Yeah.
It's actually so good.
Actually, like I don't know if you've ever seen the H Bomber Guy's Sherlock video. But like there's a joke in that video where it's like, I think we should just let Stephen Moffat like write pilots and then like have other writers pick up where he left off after that for the rest of his television season. I think we should do the same thing with Ken Penders. We should let Ken Penders come up with like a base of ideas and then like, okay, you gave us your design doc, and then let everybody else run wild with what he came up with.
Yeah, because the echidna stuff by the end is like the coolest shit ever. I genuinely like, regardless of how I feel about because to me, the main problem with the Knuckles comic is that by the end it disavows itself, and it does so flippantly, because it spends all these issues giving you backstory, which I think the backstory is awesome. Like, I love how like insane it is. I love this idea of this techno cult and like all the dingo alternate realities and like all this kind of stuff. The stupid Tobor plot, like it's so absurd. And so I love that kind of stuff. That's Archie Sonic to me. The problem is that he explains it in such a boring way. And two, that literally the Knuckles' whole character is that his dad turned him into a mutant like hybrid so that he could defeat some great evil. Knuckles dies, and Aurora says, "Hey, yeah, I gave your father a dream so that you could fight a great evil." And then Knuckles is like, "Okay, then why am I dead?" And he's like, like go into the afterlife. It's like, well, what do you mean? And so yeah, they prove that the dream was like bullshit. Or, like, it's not going to happen anymore. So it's like, what was the point?
It's so, like...
It's just so bad.
Just in general, like, Locke is one of those characters that it's just like, I don't know what's going on with you, man. Like, I'm not sure what to think about you, other than, like, most of your plot lines upset me.
Yeah, well, and Locke, I think, that's why I love the way Flynn handles him, which is that he's just like, all right, yeah, Locke's an asshole. So, like, let's actually lean into that. Let's lean into the fact that he chose the world over his son. But he still does love his son. So we're going to lean into this idea of, he's like, yeah, we're going to kill Enerjack. And like, you're going to kill your son. He's like, we have to do it. What do you want me to do? And like, you just hate Knuckles, don't you? He's like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
He can't, like, comprehend this idea of, like, doing anything other than, like, tradition and, like, the greater good, And so that's why what I love about his death is that the way he's drawn and like the way he talks, he's like, please tell him I did it for him. Like I didn't mean to turn him into this. Please help him understand that. It's like him basically like desperately trying to ask like, someone tell me I did something good.
Right.
And that's why his death is so poignant, where he does the little chant and he says, take this from my boy, give him his own life to lead. So it's like he's, in a way, not only just sacrificing himself, but he's literally releasing the chains from his own son that he shackled onto him in the first place.
Yeah, and I really... I agree with you in the sense that it's like, I really like where Ian took him in that direction, where it's like, because that's the thing, like when Locke was initially introduced, I mean, you can make assertions one way or the other. There's no way to necessarily prove it, but like, when he was first introduced, I feel like a lot of these aspects of his character were viewed as good things. Yes. Where it's like, this wasn't written to be a flaw necessarily, but when it is recontextualized like that, it's like, oh, I really like this, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so that's what I mean when I say the Knuckles comic disavows itself. It's really frustrating because Ken Penders agrees, because the literal final death speech for Locke is that he's like, he literally says, like, I listened to a dream, a vision, and I let that decide, like, how I did things, when I should have put you first, Knuckles. Like, I shouldn't have put tradition. Like, he just outlines, like, I did everything wrong. I listened to a stupid bullshit dream and decided that I was going to control your destiny. I should not have done that. I am so sorry. And then he dies. So, like, that is ultimately the conclusion that Ken Penders reaches himself for the character. And it, like, that scene is also just good because you can tell, like, it really did come from some place of, like, him talking about his dad and, like, like that kind of stuff. There's, like, a rawness to it that I think that the rest of the comic doesn't really try to go for. Like, it does feel very human the way it happens. But it doesn't read Locke. Locke for him to have his come to Jesus moment
Right.
on his deathbed. It's just more of like a tragedy, and not even, but not in like a, like not even in a way that's necessarily satisfying. It's more of just like, huh.
Yeah, it's
like you don't know how to feel.
Can't help but wonder how things would have been if you had this realization sooner, but I guess it's good that you did eventually.
Yeah, it's good that you eventually had it. And so that's why I think the Flynn version is just kind of building off of that and kind of actually like it's just taking that idea and actually, instead of Locke dying and getting his like goodbye to his son in a good way, Locke actually has to work to redeem himself in some way, and he doesn't get his son's validation for it.
Yeah. And that's like, because I mean, oh god, like if you really just think back on like all the stuff that he did to Knuckles, it's like
pretending to kill himself in front of him.
Yeah, like, bro, what? Why would you do that? Well, I mean, I just kind of thought it was funny, but
yeah, and that's where Locke becomes really fascinating, because he is also a product of his tradition, of his upbringing, because it's not like he came up with that. Like, that is something that Aether says his mom did to him. So it's like you're still responsible for it because you're perpetuating it,
right?
But it's like that's what makes Locke fascinating, because he is someone who is steeped in like this really corrupt brotherhood of guardians who have like indoctrinated everybody to act a certain way. So yeah, Locke's really fascinating. But when you're reading the Pender stuff, it doesn't feel like, one, it doesn't feel purposeful, and two, it just like I mentioned, it doesn't really go anywhere. He's just like, oh, I'm sorry, and dies.
Oops.
Meanwhile, in the main book, literally like after 25 years later is written, and like Penders is still on the book doing like certain issues, there's literally an issue where he's like, he sees Shadow, and he's like, Shadow's really interesting. Hey buddy, could you like help me find the Brotherhood? And Shadow's like, I don't know who you are. Fuck you. He's like, oh, I'll kidnap you then. It's like, Locke,
you can't be doing this. You can't just go around doing stuff like this.
It's like, Penders, you're still writing him this way. What is your problem?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, by the way, the Brotherhood of Guardians, right? Like,
pretty dope. Definitely rational people.
Yeah,
not filled with racists. And,
yeah. What was it like?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to remember, what was it that Bobby called them in the Thanks Ken Penders post? I think it was like the cabal of Knuckles' racist grandpas.
It's really funny. Like there's me and Low Art, we noticed this. There's literally a scene where when they're introducing Tobor, and we mentioned this, we're gonna mention this in the video, where they're like, all right, because we're protectors of the world, right? Like that's what they say. Like they go out and they do things, and they literally come back, and all they have to say is like, man, fucking Sonic, am I right? He's like out there helping people, and I had to like clean up after it. It was really annoying.
He's a rambunctious teen, and he's really, he's just being so disrespectful with his skateboards.
He's like helping people in danger, and then like as he does it, like then there's more things to do. It's like, fuck, can he just stop?
Can he just stop trying to change the status quo or something?
Yeah, can we just kick the can down the road like we always do? Why is Sonic making changes? And then you have the fucking Albions who are like, Knuckles, one, you said no to us. You said no when you teleported everyone away. So I think you just kind of have to die.
I think you have to die and or turn green or both.
Yeah, like they legitimately, they're like, they don't even say like, oh, Knuckles did a certain thing, we think he's gone rogue. They just say, oh, he has the powers of like Dimitri. We just have to kill him. and they're like, we're gonna strap this Chaos Siphon to you. It almost assuredly will kill you. But may Aurora have peace on your soul. Gomenasai. And I love that Finitibus kills that lady. It's so good.
Yeah, I know we already said it before, but I just love Finitibus so much. That the whole conceit of Return to Angel Island is so interesting. Yes. Where you have that bit where he's basically like screaming at these dispossessed people, like, oh, you've been waiting for the Messiah this whole time, but guess what? He's here and he sucks.
Yeah.
You never listened to me when I came to you with my scary glasses and told you about science.
I was telling you, like, the world should be burned.
Which is so funny. Is like that's just his whole thing at the end of the day. He's like he plays himself up to be very like intelligent and rational, but his whole thing is like I just want to destroy everything.
Well, and I actually used to not like Finidivus because I used to think, well, we already have that. That's called Dr. Eggman. So I used to think he was kind of lame. But this was when I was like just kind of like I had read everything, but I hadn't like reread it all together, right? So like, I had read the Knuckles comic 4 years ago. I had read Return to Angel Island last year, but I blah blah blah. So I hadn't connected them. But now I think like Finidivus is like peak perfect as a character because it's not that he's just like, oh, I'm evil. It is literally that the Albions tried to like because Locke played God and tried to make Knuckles into a being, which then made him a threat to his own people, who decided to have like completely like just harsh like just punishment for him, which we're just going to kill you because you're too powerful. Because they did that, they then created Finidivus, who is a being who destroys Albion and turns Knuckles into the thing that they were afraid of because they are all fucking assholes. And he does this because he believes that the Echidna lore is bullshit, that they haven't accomplished anything, and he's the anti-Avatar because Knuckles is the Avatar. He's good or whatever. And so he's the anti-Avatar, which is that he wants to save the world by destroying it. So now there's all this context of it's not just like, oh, Finidivus is like an Echidna comes in and he's the dark Knuckles. No, he is literally made from the fears of that people placed on the fears, expectations, and destinies that people placed onto Knuckles, and then that ends up destroying them. Like he's genius.
It's so good. Like it just takes everything that's been built up with the Echidna lore and stuff and like centralizes it in one really compelling place. I just love the way the like context builds upon context like that. Again, it's just one of those things that like you can really only get from a comic like this.
Yeah, and it's why it's hard to like people always recommend you start at 160. And it's like, sure, you can, and you will enjoy it. But I think most people would walk away going either, oh, that was fun, or they'll go like, that was a really cool Sonic comic. It's like, no, but guys, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It goes so deeper. It's literally the best Sonic anything. You just have to read literal dog shit for 200 issues. I promise.
You just have to torture yourself for hours upon hours to get to the point where you can be rewarded for it.
Yeah, you can be rewarded. And it's not the argument of like, oh, just watch this one season, it's bad, but then it gets good. It's like, no, the comic legitimately gives you payoff to garbage and makes it great. Like, it's not just like, oh, the writing gets better. It's like, no, you need to feel the hatred towards the Echidnas and Locke and all these things. You have to feel the aimlessness so that when Bowlers and Flynn are like, payoff central, baby, you're like, oh gosh, what?
What, this is suddenly good now?
Yeah, it's like, wait, all that suffering I went through, you're gonna make that the plot?
Right. It's just so good.
But I wanted to move the conversation over to so recently I have learned that the Japanese Sonic games aren't just the Sonic story, but and the characters are the same, but they just don't say like oh, wow, this is happening. No, there is actually a sect of Sonic fans who love the Japanese characterization of the Sonic world, of the Sonic characters. And I until literally this year, I did not know that there was a difference. And so I just wanted to talk about like Japanese Sonic. Yeah. And like, because you had said you more prefer that version of the character. And so I just wanted to like talk about that, and then also just kind of like it basically reframes my entire life watching YouTube videos about Sonic. Because for years I've seen people be like, oh, obviously Sonic is like this because of SA2 or SA1. And then I come to find out that that's not even what Sonic's characterization was supposed to be. What do you mean?
Yeah. I think SA1 is actually a really good example of this because there are a lot of lines where you can really like pick them apart between versions and see in real time how like the character and the perception of the character is being adjusted. So for example, I have, well, like a couple of examples in particular that I always go to for this. The first one is the scene where it's just after Sonic and Knuckles fight each other in the Mystic Ruins, and Eggman, sneaks up on them and steals the emeralds and gives them to Chaos. And I believe the dialogue in the English version is like, Sonic turns to Knuckles and he says, "Don't tell me Eggman tricked you again." And it's this very like accusatory, like, you stupid piece of shit kind of like. And in the Japanese, his tone is like way less like it's actually like kind of casual. It's like kind of jokey, like, it's actually kind of like a similar line, really. Like when you get down to the wording, it's pretty similar, but like it's just the way that he says it is way different. He's like, "Don't tell me Eggman tricked you again." Like, come on, man, really? And then in the English, Knuckles responds and says, "Me? What about you?" And then in the Japanese, I think it's just like, he just like acts embarrassed. Like he just goes like, "Shut up." Like, and then again, in the English, he's like, "Way to go, knucklehead." But in the Japanese, he goes, "Man, you really are dense." Which like is so, but it's just like so more flippant. Like he's just kind of like, "Okay, I'll roll with it. That's fine." But like, dude, you are so dumb.
Yeah. Like there's this air of like, I think the way I've come to describe Japanese Sonic is he's almost like a fairy tale creature. Like he just kind of is doing his own thing. He's kind of whimsical in a way.
I would agree with that.
He's just existing, He's just being Sonic.
But yeah, but like my favorite example is how he talks to Amy. How he talks to Amy is so different. So I believe it's the scene where Amy has just come up to Sonic and she's like, "I'm being chased by this robot, please help me." And then it's the bit where they walk out in front of Twinkle Park, where she sees the screen and she's like, "Whoa!" You're like, really excitedly, and Sonic goes, "Now what?" Like really short, like, "Shut the fuck up, Amy. You're getting on my nerves. What is it?" Yeah. And in the Japanese one, he just goes, like, it's more of a, like, because he's hyper aware that, like, she's being followed. So he goes, "What is it?" Like, he's like, "Hey, what's wrong? Like, are you exclaiming because you're being attacked or something?" So it's very different in tone. And then after that, when she gets carried off, when she gets kidnapped, and he's looking around for her, in the English, he goes, "Man, that girl is such a pain." And then in the Japanese, he says, what is it? He's like, "I hope she's doing okay."
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's night and day. Like, instead of being, like, constantly annoyed at her, he's just more worried about her. And, like, he's a little annoyed to the extent that, like, she's constantly doing things that make him worry, but he is worried about her, as opposed to being like, "I am bothered by her presence."
Like, ugh, I have to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Like, I have to lug around this stupid 12-year-old. Right. Instead, it's just kind of like, you're annoying me a little bit, but it's because you keep doing things that put you in danger, and I would rather you not.
Amy. Yes, which is really fascinating, because obviously the way Sonic was marketed in America is that he's that little brat, Yeah,
he's got the attitude.
He's got the attitude. He's way past cool. Chili dogs. Where it's like, it was just so fascinating it's fascinating to hear that, because when someone says like, "Oh, Sonic has attitude," right? When you look at him in the games, when you see like him like telling you to like get going, like he'll look and then he'll point, right? If you contextualize that through Sonic has attitude, it's like, he's annoyed at me, that cheeky little boy, But when you put it through the Japanese Sonic lens, it's just more of him being like, "Hey, let's get going,"
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? It's more of like, he's just kind of like, "Hey, are you there? Like, we gonna go? Like, let's go."
Because he's so free spirited, he always has to be on the move. He's like, "Well, I mean, if you're not gonna go, then I'm gonna go."
Yeah, I'm out of here. Game over. So yeah, and that's just something that just blew my mind when I had heard about that. So like, yeah, as far as that goes, like, do you have any particular like Japanese versions of the character, like stories with Sonic, that you're just like, that's the version of that game that I always picture in my head, or like, the Japanese dub of Sonic X? I know people say that.
Mm-hmm. Sonic X is definitely one, but yeah. Also, like, I really like him, obviously, in Sonic Adventure 2 as well. Not that, like, I think the differences are a little less, like, I mean, there are some script, like, translation awkwardness here and there in SA2 between versions, but like as far as characterization goes, I think it kind of strikes a little bit closer most of the time. But I think too, it's just like some of the delivery. A lot of the time, that's just these subtle differences in like how he says certain things or gets certain points across.
Yeah.
There's just this air of levity to Japanese Sonic a lot of the time, where it's like, I don't know, it just kind of seems a lot of the time like he's not taking as much of it seriously in like. Or when he does take it seriously, he angles less towards anger and more towards sincerity.
Yeah, like I said, he's kind of like a fairy tale creature.
Mm-hmm.
He just jumps into people's lives, you know?
In fact, I would say, actually, like, one of the things that sticks out to me the most in the Japanese dub of SA1 is I feel like the most intense he ever gets in terms of his vocal performance is when he is telling Tikal that they can't seal Chaos back into the Master Emerald. Like, he gets really passionate in that moment in particular, because he's like, we can't do that. We can't just put him to the wayside and make him suffer even more, because that's just going to create more problems. Like, if you don't address the problem, you just kick it down the way, then it's going to become worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, I really like that balance in him of like that sincerity, that kind of cheekiness and whimsiness, but like also when it comes time to be really serious about something, he's like, okay, I'm not going to stand by and let this shit keep going.
Yeah. Whereas in Archie, he goes, if it's over, my dead carcass or yours.
Yeah.
It ain't me.
It ain't gonna be me.
It ain't gonna be me, bitch. Yeah.
Like, just casually threatening to kill the Babylon Rogues.
He does, and I love him for it.
I do love that.
I think that is like the coldest thing he's ever said, which is the "You're lucky I'm the good guy."
Mm-hmm. Where there's that kind of implication where it's like, you know, I really don't want to be right now.
Well, and also like it's different from when like Sonic says like, or like a character would say like, "Oh, the good guys won. We won. We're the good guys." Like Sonic is like saying like, "This is my role."
Mm-hmm.
And if, you know, if you wanted me to like step outside that, if you wanted to give me a chance, I'd really like to. I'd like to make sure that you can't escape this building from crashing into the earth and killing you. You know, if you wanted to give me a reason to do that, you know,
you could feel free right now.
Yeah, feel free right now. Yeah, I love that part of Archie Sonic, and again, it's not because like, oh, we want to make an edgy Sonic. It's just
right.
That fits that version of Sonic who has been through all these things, who his girlfriend has been turned into a robot, and like literally like their city's been attacked, and like Nicole's being hated and all these things, and then some assholes just show up and decide to make him look like a loser because they trick him, and he's like, you know what?
I don't have time for this.
I think I'm gonna kill today.
Like, I am already dealing with far too much. You cannot expect me to be nice right now.
Yeah, the line of you know, if anyone isn't okay, you'd better hope you can run faster than me.
That's such a good line. But
like,
yeah,
oh no, that's why I wanted to start get in your face and just be like, all right, this is where we're leading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like because like that's another interesting thing. Like when you said that in your video, where it was like, you do get the sense in that moment that like, yeah, this is my role. I don't really want to be like this right now, but that's what I have to do. Whereas like with Japanese Sonic, I get the sense that like he doesn't even really view himself as a hero necessarily. It's just kind of like when he just goes about like naturally, he'll just do whatever it is that he's doing. But when he sees something that is like cruel or like unjustified happen in front of him, he's like, well, I mean, obviously I can't stand around and like just let that happen. Like I'm gonna do something about it.
Sonic just is good in the games, or Japanese Sonic is. He's just the embodiment of good in a way. Whereas Archie Sonic is a child of war who will fucking kill you if you mess with his friend.
Right. And I find that dichotomy really interesting, and I can understand why like some people would prefer one way or the other, but to me also it's just like, you know, I don't know, I feel like there's always this temptation in discussions like these for people to be like, well, this is why mine is better and this is why yours isn't as good. And like to me it's like I don't know, I'm glad that both of them exist. I think both of them have their compelling points. And like honestly, I'm just glad that we have more.
Yeah, like I mean, that's what I've always said about the multiple interpretations of Sonic is like these old versions aren't hurting anything. Like no,
Right.
like Sega is not going to make Sonic like Archie Sonic. It's not going to happen. So why can't he like why should it be about like this is how Sonic should be when it's like guys, Sonic is a billion things. I'm sorry to tell you, he has no.
He always has been.
Yeah, and it's like this just is what it is. Unless you want to, unless you want to not enjoy life and say, well, only the Japanese can make him this way. And I'm talking about, I'm not talking about for people who watch. I'm not talking about Pariah's video because he made something about. It's called like Sonic is inherently Japanese. He's just more talking about like the way Japanese Sonic is written is the version he enjoys, and he's like, I'm only really going to get that from these people, I would think. And so he's like, that's what I want more of. But I'm just more talking about people who are just like, we can't even discuss these other versions. That's not how the character should be. It's like, well, they're
not. They're not adhering to the superior canon,
like standards that I abide by.
Right, and it's just like, I don't know. I just think that's like such a useless way to have a conversation about it, because it's like, at the end of the day, these other versions are going to exist whether you like it or not. Like, you can either get with the program or just like be angry. And I would prefer not to be angry, because that's the thing. Like, people talk a lot about like, Sonic's characterization in IDW and stuff, and it's like, I like both of these comics a lot, and I understand that they're not doing the same things or trying to do the same things. And, like, do I like these things from the Archie comic that the IDW comic is not doing? Sure, of course I do. But at the same time, it's like, I understand that they don't really have the same aims as each other, and so I'm not gonna, like, go into the IDW comic and be mad that it's not trying to be something that, like, it's clearly not supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, of course. If I'm going to dislike something, I want to dislike it just because I just don't think it's doing whatever it's setting out to do well.
Right.
Or it's not to my taste. Yeah, for sure. Because, yeah, I mean, like I said, like I only got invested in the Sonic characters because of the comics. I just never attached to them from the games. I never found the stories that interesting or whatever kid me thought. He was busy playing Kingdom Hearts. So my brain was already expanded.
Everybody was Xehanort or Sora.
Everyone, yeah, exactly. And I just had to accept it.
My dad was a Xehanort.
My dad was a Xehanort. I love the meme of like, it's like the 4 different Riku forms, and it says like, and then like below it is the same 4 Riku forms, and it's like, show this to someone who doesn't know who Kingdom Hearts is, and let them know that these top 4 are all the same characters, and these bottom 4 are all different characters. They're all the same character models, just swapped around. It's because, yeah, that is how it works.
I think it's actually kind of interesting that you bring this up, because like we're kind of on opposite sides of this, because when I was a kid, I was like deathly uninterested in Kingdom Hearts. I was like, I thought this looks like the stupidest shit ever. And then as an adult, I got into it because like, I had a lot of friends that were into it, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, maybe I'll give it a shot and see what it's about. And now I'm like, no, wait a minute, I get it now. Like, you just have to meet it where it's at.
Yeah, I feel like you either become a Sonic fan or a Kingdom Hearts fan.
Because, I mean, like, I would actually say that's a good, like, attitude to have about Archie Sonic, too, is that, like, again, you just have to meet it where it's at. Like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is really goofy and stupid, but, like, if, like, I don't know, I guess I see a lot of people approach these things, and not that I necessarily think it's, like, a bad thing to do, but it's, like, you come at it with this attitude of, like, oh, this is really stupid, I'm gonna laugh at it the whole time. But, like, if it's supposed to be trying to, like, evoke a serious feeling from you, then, like, I don't know, like, you can at least try to see where it's going and engage with it on that level. Like, for example, Kingdom Hearts is really over the top and dumb, and I love that. But, like, at the same time, I'm not going to sit there and, like, laugh the whole time when they're trying to, like, make me feel something. I'm going to, like, sit there and stew with it and, like, maybe try to feel what they're showing me for a second. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does.
Yeah, like, the point is not, like, you have to give it good faith, or more so, you don't have to like it. Like, like if
right.
It's like, if you're going to have these conversations with people, I don't know, like, let's even take out the fact of, like, whether I find it annoying. Just as far as enjoying life and enjoying more media, like, just to have more of an open mind of, like, all right, this is a different thing. Let's see if it's any good, let's see if it's to my taste. Whereas, if you just go into it with, like, well, I already inherently dislike this because it's different, It's like, well, then you're just gonna have less things to enjoy in the world.
Right. It's I can't remember what it was that she called it, but I was watching a video the other day by Hazel where she was talking about like this phenomenon where if you're playing a game and then something happens that like really annoys you, or like for like her example, it was like she was playing this game and then she accidentally like lost on some kind of like encounter and hadn't saved in a while, and all of a sudden, like after encountering that inconvenience, it's like, oh, you know, the game's controls are really stilted, and you know the graphics are hard on my eyes, and like this thing is annoying to me, and this and that thing is annoying to me. And then once like she stepped back and then approached it from like, okay, calm down, like I've fixed the thing that bothered me, like all of those things that were suddenly like the worst thing ever to her, it's like, no, wait a minute, these aren't really problems at all, actually. I was just getting myself really worked up over nothing because I kind of came into it with that mindset of like, I'm gonna hate these things now.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, and I think it can go the opposite direction of like, you know, because to me, like for stories, it's all about the little things. Like those are the things that attach me to the characters. Like to, I guess, sort of tie it to Archie Sonic, it's like, you know, just the way Tracy Yardley draws Sonic's smirk just clicks in my brain to where I'm like, this is Kino. This is perfect, you know? But that can go in the opposite direction of just like, you know, Jeffrey St. John existing. He just makes me mad.
I don't like him.
I don't like him, you know? And so I think it's just more about like, yeah, being able to enjoy things more and like kind of putting yourself in that position. And then, of course, we all, you know, I always try to acknowledge that, like, you know, not everybody has my lifestyle where, like, I can just kind of take time and, like, play a video game and, like, come back to it soon. You know, some people, they work their really long job and they only have, like, 4 hours left before it's, like, time to go to bed and do it again. So if you're someone who's just like, man, fuck that game. It had that glitch and it took me out and I lost, like, 50 hours or, you know, an hour of time. Fuck that game. But, you know, we're talking more like people like us who are, like, having these... trying to have like good faith, like hopefully having good faith argumentation, you know. And it's like I think you'll be able to interact with people a lot better if you come from that perspective that we're talking about. Of like, well, let's just give it a chance. Let's see what it's trying to do, you know.
Right, and even if it doesn't like,
because otherwise
people
are trying to be a hater.
Yeah, like, even if it doesn't turn out to be your thing, it's like you can still see from that perspective of like, oh, well, I mean, okay, it may not be for me, but I still understand why people value it and enjoy it. It's not like I'm gonna, you know, turn around and be like, oh, this thing that you love sucks and I hate it and like you're an idiot.
I mean, live on camera, I literally just got a comment that said, wait, even better than Sonic from the games? That doesn't make sense. The comics aren't even canon.
Bro, what is... Okay, this is actually... Can I say, like, this is such a pet peeve for me. I'm like, bro, what is canon? Can you tell me where the canon is? Are we in the room with the canon right now? Because Sonic has so many different canons at this point that, like, there is no, like, concept of, like, reliable canon to me at this point. Like, you have different continuities, and they are canon to themselves. But, like, that's it. Like, the comics are canon to the comics. The games are canon to the games. Like, what's so hard to understand about that? You can't just say the Archie comics are not canon. Like, they exist in a canon.
Well, it's like for example, again, similar to our point about, like, just enjoying things. My favorite Sonic game is Project 06, period. It plays the best. It has the most quality of life options. And it takes the concept of 06's level design and it perfects it. It's a masterpiece. That's my favorite Sonic game, gameplay wise. Now, someone could come to me and be like, well, it's not a Sonic game. And if we're just talking about, like, if we were in a tier list, right? If we were ranking them, then yeah, let's not be cute and be like, oh, my favorite Sonic game is Sonic Triple Treble 16 bits. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the games, you know? That's, to me, that's where canon matters. It's like, we're talking about, like, the official stuff that everybody knows. You know what I mean. Don't be cute. But if I just say, this is my favorite Sonic game, it's a Sonic game. I don't care what you say. I'm sorry that big corporation Sega didn't put a stamp on it, and now I'm allowed to like it more than other Sonic games. It's a Sonic game.
You're not allowed to say that Sonic Robo Blast 2 is your favorite Sonic game because it wasn't made by Sonic Team, actually.
It wasn't made by Sonic Team, which is also not the same people who made other Sonic Team games because people come in and out of jobs and
Yeah, right, like, because that's the thing too. It's like people always say Sonic Team as though it's like this monolith that has always existed. You know the the pantheon of Sonic Team that has existed since before time immemorial. Like, no, people go in and out of the company all the time. Like, current day Sonic Team is like not the same Sonic Team as like even like 10, 15 years ago.
I'll take it a step further. You don't even have to, even if it's the exact same people, that it doesn't even work. Because Tetsuya Nomura, I don't care what modern day Tetsuya Nomura says happens to Roxas or Shion or Sora, Donald, and Goofy. He's a fucking liar because the past Nomura made a good game, and I didn't like what he did with him. So,
you were trying to do something different before.
Yeah, the Nomura of the past is not the same guy who's making these decisions now and saying, you know what, retroactively, all of this stuff is what I was going for.
Well, you see, Sora actually killed the original Nomura, and he was replaced by Robo Nomura.
He was replaced by, what would it be? It'd be like Zaruma. You gotta put the X in.
You're right. God. this went some places.
Boy. Yeah, we've gone some places. Heck yeah. I don't really have too much else to say. I think we hit all the topics I wanted to. I don't want to keep you because I also want to play the Sonic 06 update. But...
Right. Well, very quickly. So we can have a balance of, like, you know, we said a lot of things that I think people would be cool with. Now we have to say things that will make people angry. Yes. What do you think about Fleetway Sonic the comic?
Oh yes, I gave it a 1 out of 10.
Oh wow, that's scathing.
I despise it. So let me give you my history with it. I'm sorry, Johnny Vector, if you're listening. He's a cool guy. Watch his videos. He praises that comic. He loves that comic. So I started this comic with my friend because I was like, I want to read the other Sonic comic. Mm-hmm. I started with my friend, and we started it like 2 years ago. And we would read like, I can go in specifics afterwards, but the actual experience of reading it was, we were like, we're going to read this together, man. We're going to have fun. And so we got like 50 issues in or so, and we were like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, man. I think I'm going to die. Like, this is, like, we did not like it. And so we were like, you know what? Let's take a break. And so we took a 6-month break, and then we came back to him. We're like, okay, we're refreshed. Let's read this comic. We read 20 more issues, and he goes, Ian, I can't do this. You have to go on without me. And I was like, no, I need someone to talk about this comic.
I need moral support.
And he left me. And so he was like, I can't do it. You're just going to have to tell him. He's like, I can't read this. And so I climbed the mountain, and I got to the top. In my mind, I was just like, why? Why did I waste 2 years of my life hoping it would get better? Basically, my main problems with the comic are just simply, I don't like the structure. I don't like the idea of these 3 stories for pretty much every issue, and the fact that you basically only get a quarter of a story of 3 stories, and so you're constantly being flipped back and forth, and all these characters are like completely different locations doing completely different things. I think the art's cool. I really love whenever they get the one who really gives Sonic like his little scowl, you know?
Yeah.
I really enjoy that art style. I think it looks rad. But just literally every second reading that comic is pain for me because I'm just like, I just want to focus on something for 5 seconds, please.
I think that's actually kind of interesting because, like, for me, it was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was necessarily the opposite, but for me, sometimes I have like trouble really kind of sitting down with longer comics. Sometimes just depending on how much time I have. So that like bite-sized approach for me actually kind of worked for a while, just because I was like, I only have so much time to do this, so it's really easy and quick to like get through a couple issues and be like, all right, well, that's good for tonight.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, you were smart.
Didn't read it all at once.
Yeah, you weren't trying to binge it. Yeah, I was trying to be like, I want to take it all in. I want to love this world, and I just couldn't do it. Like, I don't even like. I mean, I do think a lot of the concepts don't get fleshed out in the way that I would like. Like, for example, Brutus. Like I saw Johnny Vector's video. It's like Brutus, the robot to beat Sonic, and I'm like, I read that story, dude. He like hits him in one panel, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna lose this issue, and then the next issue they beat him. I'm like, I don't know. like, like to me, a lot of the concepts felt very like just underwhelming. And to clarify, because I know people are gonna be like, a 1, what the fuck? So on my grading scale, I grade everything by rewatchability, and it doesn't mean like I have to rewatch it, but just more of like, so on my scale, a 5 is just a story, like a thing I watched. It had some good, it had some bad. Probably not gonna take anything from it though. I watched it once. I got on the roller coaster. It was okay, you know. Never gonna think about it again. And then like a 6 would be something like I play it and like, oh man, it had like a really good character that's gonna like stick with me. The rest of it was kind of mid, but like it had like one thing that like I'm gonna take from this. Cool. A 7 is something to where if you came to me and you were like, oh, let's watch or play this. I usually use TV shows for this case, but it works for comics. A 7 would be like, you know what? I do like that thing. I could watch it again. And you know what? Like, I could, you know, I might even go back to a couple episodes. Maybe I had some really good stuff. An 8 is, like, easy. If you came to me and said, let's watch this, let's watch it all. I might even rewatch it one day. It was just good. A 9 is a favorite. Or, like, a 9 is just, like, yeah, it's just excellent. I love thinking about it. I love talking about it. It's probably a favorite. And then a 10 is, like, it transcends reality. And it's, like, become a piece of my being. So that's, like,
never
Kingdom Hearts.
leave me.
Yeah, like, that's, like, Kingdom Hearts 2, or has shaped how, like, I enjoy cringe content and why I love it. And why, like, how I can define, like, what is charm and what is, like, soul, even within, like, something that seems like it's cringy. It's like, nobody cares, it's trying.
Peak Tails gets like, trolled content.
Yes, exactly, you know? And then, so, the back end of that would be, like, a 4 is something to where it's like, man, you had something here, and then you just dropped the ball. So I'm kind of like, man, you know, I was ready to love you. So that's kind of disappointing. A 3 is like, I'm kind of annoyed now, where it's like, man, you really like just like went back on yourself. Like, dang it, like I was into this. A 2 is it's bad, and so if 10 transcends reality, a 1 is the same, which is that you're not only bad, but I feel like you have insulted me personally. And that is how I felt reading Sonic the comic. I felt like the comic had told me, I just took 2 years of your life.
And you're never getting it back.
I took your friend from you, and you're not getting it back. And I was like, no, fuck you. So I gave it a 1. So just for people who like, because I know people normally with stuff, it's like, are you saying like it has no redeeming qualities? It's like, if it does, it's not that it can't have redeeming qualities. It's that I refuse to give it that because it insults me. So it's very personalized. My rating system is very personal.
I'm actually kind of curious on that note, though, like, because if it's more related to structure and stuff, I know there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh, the reason I don't like SDC is because Sonic is too mean. But, I mean, we've been talking about different modes of Sonic and how nice he can be in particular continuities. What did you think about SDC Sonic?
I thought he was fine. Like, to me, like, I never felt he was, like, too much one way or the other, because, as Johnny Vector has put in a great video he did, watch him, he's cool, he did, like, why is Sonic a jerk, or is he a jerk? And, like, no, like, they really do show that the Sonic the Comic Sonic, he's just kind of a grumpy boy, but he cares, you know? He doesn't really know how to express himself, he's a little awkward.
Yeah, that's kind of generally how I kind of feel about him, too.
Yeah, so it's like, it's more of just, like, I never got invested in him, but I also have like a really high tolerance for like annoying characters.
Oh, I see.
So like certain people might just have a lower tolerance for that, whereas like, you know, I grew up as the oldest child in a house filled with 5 little kids, so like I can tune out noise. You know, I've been trained to like understand, like, you know, he's just being grumpy. Like, who cares? It's not a big deal. So like maybe for other people that's where different, you know, they have a lower tolerance for that, but for me, like, I just read it and I was just like, oh, okay, he's kind of a jerk, whatever. That's also like why I can enjoy Locke in Archie Sonic, because some people like they just despise him because they're like, how could you be this awful? I'm like, I don't know, it just seems like he's just like an asshole character. He's kind of interesting, and it's like, right. You know, like I can separate myself from that and just be like, no, he just seems like he's just an interesting character who's like a fucking terrible person.
Right, I think there's actually kind of like an interesting disconnect that I see there with people too, where it's like, I don't know, I guess different people have different modes of enjoying characters or what they enjoy from characters. Like, I was talking to my mom about this like sometime last year, where she was like, my favorite characters are the ones that I think are like the best people, like the ones that I can relate to the most, and like what I like if I think that they think the same way I do about things or whatever. And I'm like, that's really interesting because I am totally not like that at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm really compelled by characters who, if they were people in real life, I would like hate them.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, this because to me, I come at it from like it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interacting with it on that level of it's not real. So I'm like, create these awful people. I will engage. Tell me about this.
Yeah, like as long as they're interesting, like and they can be like interestingly tragic or like interestingly the fucked up and evil, like.
Yeah, like I have, yeah, I think that's where we are very similar, which is that, yeah, like I actively just, I enjoy like just shitty people in stories. To me, it's just a matter of like, are you boring? Are you annoying me?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're wasting my time. But if it's just more of like, oh, they're just like crappy people, I'm like, oh, well, whatever. Like there's crappy people in a story. It's not real.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing too. It's like, I don't know. I guess it always depends on the context and what they're being used for or whatever. But like generally speaking, to me, I'm like, I don't really care if they're like a bunch of crappy or annoying people in a story, because there are a bunch of crappy and annoying people in real life. You got to balance it out. If you're gonna make it realistic, you got to have people like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and I guess for like maybe like a different example, like I remember I think it's Your Movie Sex, they said, which has always stuck with me, which is like, sure, it's realistic that if like the world was ending, kids would just be screaming their heads off, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, but that's not enjoyable in a movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can understand that. Like I think that makes a lot of sense. Where it's like there is that level of like if you come to a product for like I think you and I, from what I can tell, it seems like we come in like, I don't want to say open-minded because that makes me sound elitist, but just more of like we come in like, I guess maybe looking to just hit me, baby,
Yeah, just
Whereas,
show me
like,
what
I
you
think,
got.
like certain, maybe other people like your mom or like I know like my family members are like this too, where they're just like, oh, like I want this out of it, or maybe the opposite, where they're just like, I'm just gonna let it walk for me and just take what I want,
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe that's the case where it's like they're just like, oh well, I watch stories for like, or I watch shonen because I want cool action scenes. Whereas
Right.
like I'll just be like, I'll watch anything because there might be something in it that's gonna connect with. I'm not looking for it to be this,
Right. I think that's actually like a really I I have to confide this in you. I love shonen stories, but like most shonen fans, can't stand them. Like, do not get along with them at all. Because to me, I feel like so often I like invest in the like emotionality and like I invest in characters and see them from like a lens of like I'm looking at them like flawed actual people, whereas like some people are just like, oh, this character is annoying and they get on my nerves and they suck and I hate them.
Or why do they take that L? This is really bad for the stat sheet.
Right. And like, for example, like, I'll see like a character who like, I don't know. I can't pull like a random example off the top of my head, but like, people will be like, oh, they're really annoying. Like they cry all the time. And I'm like, well, I mean, like, did you read the story? Like, what happened to the character? Like, it's understandable that they would be. And they're like, yeah, but it's annoying and it gets on my nerves.
Yeah, to me, I draw the line less at like, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like I think we come at it from it's like, is it interesting that they're annoying?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is it interesting that they cry all the time? Is it compelling?
Right.
Rather than like, it annoys me.
Like personally, I would rather you not.
Do not cry. Can you just be cool, Deku?
Yeah, right. Like, oh god, yeah. Like people do that shit all the time. They're like, oh, why does the main character cry all the time? It's like, what?
You watch the story,
see
right?
what they're going through?
Yeah.
Like, would you not be crying? No. That if it were me, it'd be different.
Be different. Yeah. And, yeah, I definitely think that's where it's. Yeah, it's just different for different people and how they experience media, and also again like how much time they're invested in. Like if if you're someone who is just like, I just want to watch good stuff and I feel like this is what I enjoy, then cool. But if you're like me, who like my job is a mindless 9 to 5 where I'm allowed to just watch anime, I'll try anything because I've got all the time in the world. They're paying me to watch anime.
Well, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just I have all the patience in the world. I'm not wasting any time by trying out these different things.
Is there anything in particular that you've been watching recently, by the way, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I'm always watching at least like three or four shows. Let's see. I'm currently watching Kaguya-sama season 3.
Very good.
So I'm catching up to that. I'm watching Figure 17, which is like an old 2000s show about which is like these this alien, like the premise, like this alien lands on this farmland or whatever. This little girl, she's dealing with the fact that she's moved out of the city and she doesn't know anybody. And her mom died, and so she doesn't know how to, she's very shy. Mm-hmm. And then by interacting with this kind of alien conflict, she ends up having basically a twin version of her from this encounter that is basically just her. It has all of her memories, but it is like upbeat and friendly, and it has its own person. And so through their relationship, this Shire girl learns to basically come out of her shell, and it's just kind of a coming of age story of that. And then also they fight monsters because that's kind of the hook. You're fighting evil aliens or whatever. The cool. Really interesting part about the show is that every episode is 46 minutes.
Oh,
and it's 12 episodes. So I'm like, huh? How did this get made? That's not correct.
Was it like an OVA or something, or?
I guess. Maybe it's because it's like a full 12 episodes, so it's like a normal season of a show. So yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, it's called Figure 17, Tsubasa and Hikaru. It's a good show. I watch pretty much one a day because it's just kind of very vibey. 80% of the episode has no music. It really tries to just have you be in the world of this little girl living out in the country.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Really interesting. It has 3 songs in the whole thing, and then of course, in typical anime fashion, the opening, for a show that's literally about 2 little girls and their coming of age story, you have the anime theme, which is called "Boy," and it's got this just hard rock song where they're singing Japanese, and then the final line is "Dream will never change" in English.
Oh my god, I love anime.
Yeah, anime's awesome. And then I watched BoJack Horseman.
Oh yeah. How did you watch the whole thing, or?
Yeah, I finished it.
Oh god, I love BoJack. It makes me very upset, but
that's definitely a show where if you don't like annoying people,
oh yeah,
or bad people, you're not gonna make it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right there in the main character, BoJack himself is he's such a complicated character. He's a piece of shit, but also you can't help but feel for him sometimes too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, BoJack's hard because talking about pretty much anything past season 1 feels like a spoiler.
Oh yeah, can't really get into it, but I mean, if you've seen it,
Yeah, and I mean, I would just say, I guess, because that's what I heard all the time is just watch BoJack. It's really good. It's peak fiction. So I guess to give a premise for why it's good, I would just say it really basically its main character is an awful person, and it dives pretty much into every single facet of why that is. But the reason this is not, the reason it's a fun show, because I feel people oftentimes for example, when people will suggest Avatar, they'll say it's the show about war, and it's not a kid show, baby. The characters go through these things, and it's but that's not what it is most of the time when you're watching it. When you're watching it most of the time, it's just fun.
Right.
So what's the appeal of BoJack? People will pitch it as it's dark and it's the worst of people, mankind open their hearts out. It's but it's also really funny. And BoJack is one of 5 characters who are in every episode, and every one of the characters is on the sliding scale of basically the best of them is a really good person who's trying to figure out their life, and then you have BoJack, who's the worst person trying to figure out their life, and then in between you have different characters to varying levels of that, of self-hatred or doing something bad or doing something good but still needing to have something to learn or going on fun wacky adventures. So the show predominantly is a comedy, is funny, and has a big cast of characters that will keep you from getting drowning in the depression to where it's just what am I watching? And so that's something that I wish someone would tell me when they watch it. It's oh, the show's actually funny. And there's more than just BoJack.
Right, exactly. Because I guess we all get caught up in the things that really ice pick our brains the most when we watch something. But you have to remember there is more to it than that. You have to sell people on it somehow.
like on a second by second basis. Like, what am I supposed to get out of this? You know?
Right. It's the same way that, like, you know, you can't just sell somebody on, like, oh, you should watch this animated movie because the animation is really good. Like, I mean, yeah, but, like, what else?
Yeah, for sure. Unless, like, it really is one of those things where it's like, no, like, literally just, like, sit down and watch it and just let it wash over you. Like, if that's the pitch, then, like, yeah, I get it. You know, because there's stuff like that. But yeah, what are you watching? Are you watching anything?
Yeah, I've been chipping away at a couple of things whenever I have the spare time, which, I mean, like, my schedule's a nightmare, so not all the time, but I've been rewatching Hellsing Ultimate recently.
Okay.
That's really fun because it is just, like, you know, I value like thought-provoking media, and I also value really, like, dumb, over-the-top bullshit. And Hellsing is definitely that, because it's just like superbly ultra violent. Like, I don't know how much you know about Hellsing.
Watch the abridged series, so I
Okay,
know, like,
yeah. So, like, I don't know. There's just something that's really funny to me about, like, the premise of, like, oh, yeah, you know, we have all these, like, psychological anime. We have this stuff that, like, talks about the meaning of life. Oh, what's your plot? Oh, well, mine was about, like, a vampire who kills Nazi vampires from South America, but yours sounds cool, too.
Sorry, bro. Yeah, like, well, I mean, that's what I always, like, that's where, like, I always get confused when people will, like, pitch Kingdom Hearts. It's like, oh, it's the heart, it's the emotion. I'm like, no, guys, it's that Donald fucking Duck can shoot lightning, and Goofy Goof is there, and he's talking to Sephiroth. That's what's good about Kingdom.
Yeah, I love the scene where Goofy dies.
Yeah, it's great. It's Kino, and like, freaking Donald Duck is upset about it, and I'm like, yeah, let's kick ass.
Yeah, it's so good. Like,
Yeah.
I very recently, like, I need to get back to it because I sort of, like, left off when I had this period of time where I was really busy, but I had been going through each Kingdom Hearts, like, in release order for the first time. I had finished Kingdom Hearts 2 and then watched 358 and all of that stuff. And I think where I left off was I was supposed to play, I think it was either, like, Birth by Sleep next, maybe? I think it was Birth by Sleep. That was fun.
Okay. Awesome. And going back to things you've been watching, is there anything else?
Yeah, there was something that I was watching the other day, but now I can't remember.
You seen any movies?
I did see the Mario movie.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Do you want to talk about that? Mario podcast, go!
Yeah, it was okay. Like, that was pretty much my impression of it. It was just like, it's about what I expected it to be. It's just, you know, it was a good, fun, simple time. I do think the chatter around the movie has sort of, like, eclipsed the movie itself at this point, where it's like people are arguing over, like, whether people should have had more expectations for it or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think that it's, like, a sin for people to have, like, wanted a more in-depth story or, like, criticize the fact that the plot was thin, but also at the same time, it's like, it's not, like, the worst thing ever either.
Yeah, no. It's yeah, I mean, it's just more of usual internet stuff of just, like, people taking an extreme side one way or the other.
Yeah, I do find it very funny, though. I do find it very funny that people have, like, turned it into this, like, two-sided, like, is it woke or not? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's the Mario movie?
Well, it's like the whole stupid thing of, like, is Peach a girl boss?
It's like, who cares? I don't care. Like, that's the funny thing. It's like, oh yeah, it's woke because Peach is a girl boss, but also it's an anti-woke because Chris Pratt is in it and it made a lot of money. Like, can you decide which one you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, my problem with the movie was, like, I think the way I described it is that it's just like it's like the living embodiment of a reductive, like, film description. Like, you know how you'll see those memes of, like describe your favorite movie in, like, the, like, stupidest way possible. That's what this movie feels like, where it's just like,
but
Mario,
that's the actual story.
Yeah, it's like Mario doesn't give up, and therefore he doesn't do that for the movie, and then he wins. Like, there's
yeah,
like, you know, he has to overcome the obstacle course. Now, in a story, we would have it to, or even, no, let's not even make it a story. We'll go even less. For a character moment, we would have it be that, like, he's, like, getting beat up, but then he's just like, no, I gotta do it for my brother. Or if we wanted to be a more technical story, we would have it be that he learns from these things, and we're showing that, oh, Mario's intelligent. He's not actually this dumb, bumbling plumber that the people say he is. Or, we would do anything. But no, in the movie, it's just, he gets beat up, and then at the very end, he's figured it out. Why? Because Mario doesn't give up. The end.
Yeah, I was actually, like, very confused, like, within the logic of the movie itself. It's like, Peach is like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. Like, I have my army and stuff, and Mario's like, wait a minute, let me go with you. And she's like, okay, I will let you come with me if you can prove yourself in the obstacle course. And then she stays behind and waits for him for like 50 hours while he fails repeatedly. It's like, why don't you just leave him?
Yeah, no, it's very strange. And well, like, with Peach or whatever, like, to me, my problem with Peach is, again, I'm just like, well, you're just boring. Like, it's not even like she's a girl boss or whatever. It's just like, what makes Peach fun is she is that dichotomy of, like, the girl in the frilly pink dress, but she'll also, like, kick your ass with, like, a golf club and smash,
Right. And in this, it's just like, I don't know, like, it's not that she's too competent. It's just like, at that point, it just kind of becomes her character, where it's like, okay, but, like, where's the rest of her character, though? Like, what is... Her character
just is that she is competent, not too competent.
What's your personality, though?
She's just not bad at stuff. She's not dumb, and she's not particularly great at stuff either. So it's like, what are you?
She's the princess.
Yeah.
Okay.
They really liked that bike shot, though. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, this movie is really trying not to be horny for Princess Peach, and then it was like, nah, but we get the bike.
yeah. They have to do the Mario Kart bike suit. It's like, okay, I see you. I understand.
Yeah. I think my favorite character was the Luma who wanted to die.
That was... Yep.
I like, that's just my style of humor. I like the cute thing contrasted with, like, some really dark thing. That's why I like Smiling Friends. And, like, you have, like, the little... have you seen Smiling Friends?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah, there's just like this, like, they perfectly kind of explain their comedy process, which is they have this character, I think he's named, like, Dave or whatever, and he's just an annoying, like, stick man who goes... That's all he does, and he's like at 3 frames per second, basically.
You cut out when you made whatever noise it was.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he just makes annoying noises, and his character is that he just moves at like 3 frames per second, and just does that to the main character. And so the joke becomes that the main character's like, dude, if you do that again, I'm gonna punch you. And then he stops. And then later in the episode, he comes back, and he punches him, and they do like 60 frames per second animation of him like clutching his stomach and be like, oh, and they're like, yeah, like, that's the comedy we want to go for, is like cartoony characters reacting very realistically to like cartoony things happening to them.
Which is great.
Yeah, I love that contrast. So the Luma being like, they're all gonna like fall into the magma, and then they all get saved, and he's like, boo.
I love too that they like got the voice actor, like, I think it was just like a literal child of like somebody on the staff or whatever. So it's like there's this like actual legitimate innocence to it's like, it's almost like you don't really understand what you're saying right now.
Yeah, and that's what I always think about when I'm like, is it cool that we like not child actors, but like when you get child actors where it's like, all right, little kid, in this music video, you're going to be terrorized by a bunch of monsters.
Right.
Like, or we need you to cuss and like say like these things. I'm like, should we have had the kid say the sweet release of death?
Should we have made the entirety of the rehearsal season 1? I don't know if you've seen that, but oh god.
The rehearsal.
With Nathan Fielder.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. There are like a lot of moments in that show where it's like, are you pushing this too far? Like, I'm not sure. Like, should you be doing this?
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was a very interesting show, though.
I was entertained, and they got paid, so...
So it worked out.
So hopefully it worked out. There's too much happening in the world for me to think about it.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, like, we just talked about Archie Sonic the Hedgehog for, like, nearly 2 hours, so that just goes to show.
You just gotta take it day by day. That's where we're gonna leave you off on. Enjoy your life day by day. The world is a convoluted mess, but you have you, and you can only control you. So enjoy the you that you have right now. You.
Don't waste your precious time. what is that Sonic box art quote?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Hold on to that, your die, cat. That's from Gravity Falls.
I do love Gravity Falls.
All right. Well, tacos are here, so I do think I want to eat those, and we have been talking for like 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually really fun.
Yeah, I had a really good time. Real quick, do you have any idea on when that sweet savory Knuckles video is coming our way, or should we just wait and see?
I would say, I think we planned, what is this, January, February, March, April. I think we said like early June.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, we cranked out the last one in under 2 months.
Yeah, which is crazy to me.
Just because Loart's an insane person.
Well, I mean, I guess he's proven that already.
Yeah, so, by listening to me. But yeah, I mean, that's how I make all my friends, is I just burst into your DMs and I say, hey, you want to talk to me? And you fools always listen.
So if you need any advice from this, it's don't let Ian talk to you.
Don't let me talk to you, or I will convince you to read Archie Sonic. And that could be detrimental to your health. So yeah, watch more Marcy's stuff. Her stuff is kick-ass, and I love all your Sonic stuff especially. I don't really necessarily watch all your things because I don't necessarily know everything you're talking about. Like Undertale, I still haven't played Undertale, so I was like, I'm not going to watch that. What if I want to play it? I don't want to get spoiled.
Yeah.
But your stuff is fantastic. Keep it up. I think I commented on Frontier's video because I didn't really have that great of an experience. What I loved about your video was it felt like the epitome of like a glass half full kind of review, but in like in a sincere way, like really looking at it and be like, here are the flaws, here are the positives, and here's the reason I'm looking forward to the future, rather than just kind of being like, this is it, we did it, we fixed Sonic.
It's finally good again.
Finally good, guys. So yeah, I really love your stuff. Keep it up. Hope you make more Sonic stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I've really enjoyed this. All right, go enjoy your tacos.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Bye.